Hey guys, welcome back to Storytime with Mr. Isaiah. We are reading Sink or Swim, and if it's starting chapter 25 today, so if you're behind, make sure you go back and get caught up, and then join back up with us on chapter 25. The fifth night, it started raining, and somebody actually shouted, "Well, hallelujah," except for Donaldson, who hadn't lost anybody else on the boat, and every one of us turned our faces to the sky, opened our mouths, and stuck out our tongues to try to drink the rain. After a few frustrating minutes of that, we got organized and spread out the tarps and let the rainwater roll down to one end and into a bucket. Once that bucket was full, which took at least an hour, one guy pulled his shirt off and they used it to strain the water into another bucket. Meanwhile, continuing to collect as much rainwater as possible in the middle of the tarps. "Double water rations tonight," Chief announced, and everybody cheered. The water had a strong, briny taste, but it was still water and nowhere near the salt of the ocean. So it helped with the crippling thirst that was making our tongues swollen and our lips blistered. The rain only lasted a few hours, but our luck still held that night when a school of mackerel swam close and one of the guys was somehow miraculously able to grab one and throw it into the boat. At first, I thought there would be a feeding frenzy, men literally taking bites out of the fish before scaling it and cleaning it, or anything. But once again, Chief Kerr stepped in. "Everybody will get a bite," he said. "But not like this. We need to use everything. Head, guts, everything. This is more important to us as bait than it is as food." I volunteered to clean the fish since I'd been doing it all my life. Plus, it was something to do to take my mind off this fear that had been growing in me, the possibility that we wouldn't ever get rescued, and that my mom would never know what happened to me. They had to pass the fish to me, and no one. They had to pass the fish to me and one of the knives, since I couldn't move with my bad leg, and there was no room for anybody to move on the boat anyway. I made short work of it, cutting the meat into bite-sized pieces for guys to pass around. It was tough to eat, but we were already out of hardtack, and biscuits and peaches had been for 2 days, so anything was better than nothing. Chief Kerr passed out the fishing lines, and I baited those too. With the intestines, guys caught 2 more fish that night, and we feasted again the next day. I felt a little better after that, and a little more hopeful for a while. Strobe still wasn't speaking, but after another couple of days, neither were the rest of us. My leg felt okay, but I knew I couldn't put any weight on it, even if I tried to stand. At least there didn't seem to be an infection. Maybe the nightly drenching in salt water helped with that, though it was terrible on the rest of my body. The rest of our bodies, sores broke out on our skin, on our faces, on our tongues, inside our mouths. We kept catching fish, but never enough to make our hunger really go away. Enough to keep us alive, I guess. And there was some moisture in the meat, which also helped. But we desperately needed another rain. We didn't get one, though, not for a while. After 8 days, we even tried peeing in the buckets. Not that anybody had much pee in them. Some didn't have any. But it was undrinkable, even with the severe thirst we all had. Worse than drinking seawater, and seawater, we'd always been told, would pretty quickly kill you if you drank it and kept drinking it. That didn't stop me from thinking about it, though, even fantasizing about it. Just a sip would possibly happen if I took just a little sip. Surely it would help some. Even a little relief from the terrible thirst would be something. A guy named Benji beat me to it and immediately wished he hadn't, because he gagged for a long time and threw up the bit of fish he had just had. The only thing he would have to eat all that day. Nobody was sympathetic. Nobody said anything except to call him an idiot. When he stopped gagging, Benji went on the corner. The sailor who'd called him that, the two of them sprawling all over guys, who punched them until Chief Kerr roared at everybody to knock it off, or else he'd be throwing bodies to the sharks. Just to make sure, Chief climbed over to where the two men were fighting and grabbed their collars and pulled them apart. "This is not going to happen on my boat," he yelled in their faces, shaking them like they were a couple of little kids, and like little kids they immediately calmed down. Neither one would look at him or at the rest of us. Chief shoved them back in their places. Somebody must have bumped into him during the meal, because when he stood back up to lecture us more, I saw that Chief's face was bleeding where he had been burned. A lot. Benji took off his shirt and handed it to Chief Kerr. Chief took it and just stared at the shirt for a minute. He must have felt the blood oozing down his cheek, because he put his hand there and it was covered with blood. When he pulled it away, he didn't use Benji's shirt though. He handed it back. "Put it on," he said. "You won't last long in this sun without it. Or tonight either." He shook his head. "Here's the thing, men. We stick together. We survive this. We work together. We survive this. We take care of one another. We survive this. It's as simple as that." "Sorry, Chief," said Benji, putting his shirt back on. "Sorry, Chief," said Connor, the sailor who'd called Benji an idiot. "I don't want to hear sorry, Chief," Kerr said. I just want this to be the end of it." And it was. There wasn't any more fighting after that. Guys might say a cross word now and then to one another, but nobody wanted to get on Chief's bad side. And probably we were all growing too weak to fight or even disagree much as well. The next few days were just like the ones before. Freezing nights, rough waves, shark bumping the lifeboat, blistering days. The only happy moments were when somebody caught a fish, usually mackerel or sea bass, and we all got to eat and satisfy our water craving from the wet meat, at least a little. Once somebody caught a small shark and we tried to eat that, but it was too tough. We chewed and chewed, but didn't have any spit in our mouths to soften it up, or strength in our jaws to wear down the meat enough to even swallow it. A couple of guys tried drinking the blood, but that was almost impossible to get out, and it ended up making them sick. I could feel myself growing weaker and sadder about Woody and the others who died, and about the possibility that we might never be found, and I might never see my mom or Danny or home again. I prayed we would be rescued, and I prayed that if we weren't, that Mama and Danny would somehow find out what happened to me, and would know that I loved them all the way to the end. And then, just when we were probably all giving up hope, it rained again. Only this time it wasn't a rough, stormy rain, but almost like a warm spring rain. Though it was now late October, we filled our buckets this time, not keeping any of them empty for bailing. We drank more than we had in 2 weeks, and then we filled the buckets again. "Maybe it's a sign," Benji said. "Maybe we'll be rescued soon." "Yeah," Connor said. "Bound to happen." Since the fight, Benji and Connor seemed to have become friends somehow. We all wanted to believe them, of course. It was just that nobody actually did. Heck, they didn't even believe it themselves. They were just talking. And that's the end of chapter 25. So I will see you guys back here tomorrow for chapter 26. I love you guys. Take it easy. Bye-bye.